We are raised on stories that tell us family is forever, the ultimate safety net, the people who will always catch us when we fall. It's a comforting belief, a thread we hold on to as life twists and turns. But somewhere along the way, life starts to whisper a quieter, more complicated truth. The people we once thought would always be there begin to drift, not necessarily out of cruelty or lack of love, but because life has its own demands. Children grow up, careers consume time, health begins to falter, and the rhythm of family changes. What once felt like an unbreakable circle starts to widen, and we find ourselves standing in the middle of that space, trying to understand where everyone went. At 60, that realization hits with a different kind of honesty. It's not bitterness, it's awakening. You start to see that family love is real, but not always reliable. It is often conditional on time, proximity, and shared energy. The same people who once depended on you may now have lives you barely fit into. Their priorities shift, their availability fades, and their presence becomes occasional. This doesn't mean they love you less. It means life keeps moving, and love alone doesn't hold it still. The myth that family will always be your safety net becomes tenderly dismantled, and you're left facing an uncomfortable but liberating truth: the responsibility for your peace, stability, and well-being rests primarily in your own hands. For decades, many of us pour everything into our families. We sacrifice sleep, dreams, and sometimes even our identity to be the dependable one, the giver, the foundation. And when that role is no longer needed in the same way, we feel lost. There is a kind of quiet grief that comes from realizing you have become a background character in the very story you helped build. But that grief carries a hidden invitation, a chance to reclaim yourself. Because once you stop waiting for others to be your constant source of comfort, you start discovering what you're truly made of. You begin to see that love can coexist with distance, and that needing less from others does not mean you love them any less. The myth of lifelong family security also teaches us something profound about expectations. When we expect family to fill every emotional gap, we set ourselves up for disappointment. When we expect them to read our minds, to show up exactly as we need, we set them up for failure. At 60, expectations begin to soften, not because we've given up, but because wisdom teaches us that people can love you deeply and still not be your anchor. You learn to stop waiting for perfect support and start building your own internal ground. That shift is not cold, it's compassionate. It's the act of releasing others from the impossible burden of being your everything. There's a painful beauty in seeing family for who they are: imperfect, human, sometimes inconsistent. The older you get, the more you realize that your relationship with them becomes less about dependence and more about understanding. You stop needing constant reassurance and start cherishing genuine moments of connection. A 5-minute phone call, a shared meal, a small act of care. These things begin to mean more than promises of forever. You stop measuring love by presence and start recognizing it in the small, quiet gestures that still find their way to you. And yet, there's an undeniable loneliness that sometimes creeps in. The house feels quieter, the calls less frequent. You might find yourself longing for the chaos of earlier years, when everyone needed you, when your days were filled with movement and purpose. But in that stillness, there is something sacred. It's the space where you finally meet yourself again. You start tending to your own needs with the same devotion you once gave to everyone else. You start to realize that maybe the myth was never about family failing you. It was about you learning to stand without needing them to hold you. The truth is, family is not a guarantee, it's a gift. And gifts are meant to be appreciated, not expected. Once you see that, you free yourself from resentment and replace it with gratitude. You begin to love people for who they are, not for how much they stay. You begin to see that the most reliable support system is not bound by blood, but by awareness, health, purpose, and choice. You can still be surrounded by love, but it will look different. It will be quieter, slower, more intentional. And that's okay, because life after 60 isn't about clinging to what was promised. It's about embracing what remains true. The myth of family as lifelong security slowly unravels, and what's left behind is a deeper truth about love. Love is not ownership. Love is not obligation. Love is freedom. And when you release others from the duty to be your savior, you step into the powerful realization that you have always been capable of holding yourself. The strength, compassion, and courage you once poured into everyone else were never lost. They were simply waiting for you to bring them home. There comes a moment in life, often somewhere around 60, when you stop taking your health for granted. It isn't just about aches or stiffness, or the fatigue that visits more often. It's about realizing that your body is no longer something that automatically follows your will. The body begins to speak its own language, one of limits, reminders, and demands for gentleness. In your younger years, you could push through exhaustion, ignore hunger, sleep less, and still feel invincible. But as the years unfold, you start to understand that your health is not just physical stamina. It is dignity, it is independence. It is your ability to live life on your own terms. Without it, even love and success lose their meaning. Health becomes the quiet foundation beneath everything you value. It's the reason you can get out of bed without help, the reason you can enjoy a morning walk, the reason you can sit at the table and eat with grace. When that foundation weakens, so does your sense of control over life, the ability to move freely, to care for yourself, to make your own choices. These are the things that protect your dignity in a world that often overlooks the elderly. Health, therefore, is no longer about vanity or appearance. It's about agency. It's about staying connected to the parts of yourself that still want to live fully, to love deeply, and to keep discovering joy in small moments. When you start treating your health as a sacred responsibility rather than an afterthought, everything changes. You begin to understand that every choice counts, not in the way it once did, where you chased perfection or beauty, but in the way it preserves your peace and presence. The way you eat, the way you move, the way you rest, and the way you manage your emotions, they all become acts of self-respect. You realize that caring for your body is not selfish, it's an expression of gratitude. You've carried yourself through decades of challenges, heartbreaks, celebrations, and labor. Now, your body deserves tenderness. It deserves care without guilt. At 60, the temptation to surrender to decline can be strong. You start to hear the whispers, "It's just part of aging," or "What's the point of trying now?" But that's the voice of resignation, not reality. The truth is, health at this stage may not look like what it did in your 30s, but it can still be vibrant, strong, and grounded. It's about creating a new relationship with your body, one built on listening instead of controlling, nourishing instead of punishing. Walking becomes meditation, food becomes medicine, and rest becomes an act of strength. You start to appreciate how movement keeps your mind clear, how sunlight affects your mood, and how stillness restores your spirit. There's also an emotional dimension to health that becomes impossible to ignore. Stress, resentment, unspoken grief, they all live in the body. You start to notice that the heaviness in your chest isn't just physical, it's emotional weight that's been carried for too long. Healing, then, isn't just about vitamins or exercise. It's about forgiveness, about letting go of the old stories that keep your heart clenched. The moment you start to release emotional pain, your body responds. You breathe deeper, sleep better, and move more freely. You begin to understand that mental and emotional health are not separate from physical health. They are threads in the same fabric. The dignity that comes from good health is not about pride. It's about freedom. The freedom to go for a walk when you want to choose what you eat, to decide how you spend your day. It's about not feeling like a burden, not because others wouldn't help you, but because you want to stand tall in your own story for as long as you can. That sense of self-sufficiency feeds your confidence, your joy, and your identity. You may not be able to control everything that happens in your body, but you can control how you care for it, how you honor it, and how you speak to it. And when you think about health as the foundation of dignity, it shifts the way you treat yourself. You start saying no to things that drain your energy, no to people who bring constant chaos, and yes to boundaries that protect your peace. You learn to listen to fatigue as a sign of wisdom, not weakness. You learn that taking a break doesn't mean giving up. It means respecting the body that's been loyal to you through every phase of life. This is not about fighting age, it's about aging with awareness. It's about realizing that strength now comes from consistency, not intensity, from presence, not perfection. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who takes ownership of their health, not because they fear death, but because they honor life. That kind of strength radiates calm. It inspires others. It reminds everyone that wellness isn't about youth, it's about alignment. When your mind, body, and soul work together, you carry yourself with quiet confidence. You become grounded in the kind of peace that no external support can give you. At 60, that's what real security looks like. Not in what others can provide, but in the steady, compassionate relationship you build with yourself. There is a deep sense of peace that comes from knowing you can take care of yourself, not because you have everything, but because you have enough. Financial independence, especially after 60, is not about luxury or status. It's about dignity. It's the quiet confidence that you can make decisions without asking for permission. It's the freedom to live the rest of your life on your own terms without being at the mercy of others' generosity or guilt. Money may not be the key to happiness, but it is a powerful shield against helplessness. It allows you to move through the world with choices, and choices are what give life its richness. In your younger years, money often feels like a race, a chase for more, better, faster. But as you age, the relationship with money changes. It becomes less about accumulation and more about security. It's about knowing your bills are paid, your needs are met, and your future is not hanging on someone else's decisions. That kind of stability brings a different kind of peace, one that can't be bought with wealth alone. It's a peace that comes from responsibility, foresight, and the quiet pride of having built something for yourself. It's also a reminder that financial independence isn't just about numbers. It's about emotional freedom. The freedom from anxiety, dependence, and the silent fear of becoming a burden. There's a painful truth that many people discover later in life. Love does not pay the bills, and family support, while comforting, cannot always sustain you. Children grow up, they build their own lives, and their financial priorities rarely align with yours. Depending on them may seem like a natural step, but it can quietly erode your sense of confidence. It can turn simple needs into moments of hesitation and gratitude into guilt. Financial dependence, even on those who love you, can make you shrink yourself to fit into their capacity. It's not about pride, it's about emotional balance. When you can stand on your own, you preserve not just your comfort, but your self-respect. Financial independence also gives you the power to say no to situations, relationships, or environments that no longer serve you. When you are not financially tied to someone, you can walk away from disrespect without fear of losing your safety. You can make choices based on your values instead of your needs. You can live where you feel peace, not where you feel tolerated. This kind of autonomy changes the quality of your life in ways that no one talks about enough. It's not about wanting to control others. It's about not needing them to control you. That's the quiet victory of financial freedom. Building and maintaining that independence after 60 takes both courage and discipline. It means looking at your resources honestly and asking yourself what truly matters. It's learning to separate wants from needs, to simplify without settling. It might mean downsizing your space but expanding your peace. It might mean saying no to certain comforts so that you can afford the security of knowing you owe nothing to anyone. There's dignity in living within your means. There's strength in understanding that contentment comes not from how much you have, but from how wisely you manage what's yours. Money is also energy. It reflects how you valued your time, your effort, your patience. It holds the story of your sacrifices, the long hours you've worked, and the dreams you've put aside. At this stage of life, financial independence is a form of self-honoring. It's acknowledging all the years you gave to others and deciding that now you get to take care of yourself with the same devotion. You start to see spending not as indulgence, but as intention. Every purchase becomes a statement about what you value. Investing in your comfort, your health, your hobbies, it all becomes part of living with purpose. There's also emotional healing in separating your worth from your wealth. When you understand money as a tool instead of an identity, you stop chasing and start managing. You stop measuring your success by comparison and start measuring it by stability. Financial independence teaches you humility and balance. It teaches you that abundance is not the same as excess. It's waking up knowing you're safe, having enough to share without fear, and sleeping peacefully because no one else owns your tomorrow. The wisdom that comes with 60 reminds you that dependence is not love. It's vulnerability without power. Love should be a choice, not a transaction. And when you can stand financially independent, your relationships change. You love more freely, without resentment or expectation. You give without fear of losing yourself. You become a source of strength rather than need. That's the kind of presence that transforms not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. Financial independence is not only about money, it's about control over your time, your environment, your emotions. It's about being able to decide what brings you peace and being able to afford that peace. It's about living in a way that reflects gratitude for the years you've worked and wisdom in how you spend what you've earned. It's knowing that you are capable, even in a world that often underestimates older adults. It's standing in your truth. Proud of the life you've built, knowing that your strength doesn't come from your bank account. It comes from your ability to live fully, freely, and with self-respect. There comes a time in life when you realize that not everyone who walks beside you is walking with you. At 60, friendships become less about quantity and more about depth. You stop chasing crowds, you stop trying to be liked by everyone, and you start valuing the few who truly see you. Genuine friendships are no longer built on shared interests or convenience. They are built on understanding, trust, and emotional safety. They are the people who don't need you to pretend, who don't rush to fix your pain, who simply sit with you in silence and make you feel less alone. In a world that often celebrates youth, speed, and productivity, having a friend who reminds you that you are still enough just as you are becomes one of life's greatest gifts. When you are young, friendships are often tied to circumstances, school, work, shared adventures. But as life unfolds, people drift in different directions. Some friendships fade quietly, not because of anger, but because life simply changes shape. By 60, what remains are the connections that have survived storms. The people who stood by you not because they needed something, but because they genuinely cared. These are the friendships that feel like home. You can go months without talking, yet when you do, the conversation flows as if no time has passed. They know your history, your struggles, your strengths, and your flaws. And they love you in the space between all of them. Genuine friendships at this stage of life are built on honesty. You no longer have the energy for shallow conversations or pretending to be someone you're not. You crave truth, not performance. You value people who speak with kindness, not those who flatter. You begin to understand that real connection requires vulnerability. It's in the sharing of fears, regrets, and joys that true friendship deepens. You realize that being seen for who you really are is rare, and you protect those relationships fiercely. The older you get, the less you need people who impress you, and the more you need people who understand you. There's also a certain humility that comes with aging. You learn to forgive more easily, to let go of grudges that once felt important. You start valuing the time you have rather than wasting it on resentment. Friendship becomes less about keeping score and more about mutual respect. You begin to understand that sometimes people disappoint you not out of malice, but out of their own limitations. You stop demanding perfection and start appreciating effort. The friends who stay through your quieter seasons, the ones who show up not when it's convenient, but when it's needed. Those are the ones who become your emotional backbone. In this chapter of life, genuine friendships are also a mirror. They reflect back to you who you've become. They remind you of your worth when you forget it. They challenge you when you settle, and they celebrate you without envy. They see your wrinkles and your wisdom, your fatigue and your fire, and they hold space for all of it. A true friend doesn't make you feel old. They make you feel alive. They remind you that laughter still heals, that connection still matters, and that joy doesn't have an expiration date. But genuine friendships don't just appear. They require care. They need time, attention, and emotional honesty. You have to reach out to check in, to listen deeply. You have to let people know when you're thinking of them. At 60, it's easy to retreat into solitude, to assume that everyone is busy or that your presence no longer matters. But friendship, like health, is something you must tend to. It's the small gestures, a message, a visit, a shared cup of tea, that keep the thread alive. You realize that nurturing friendship is not a duty, it's a form of nourishment. It keeps your spirit open and your heart grounded. True friends also hold you accountable. They tell you when you're wrong, but with love. They remind you of your strength when you start doubting yourself. They celebrate your wins without needing to compete. They are the witnesses to your life, the keepers of your memories, the people who remind you that even when everything else changes, connection endures. There's something deeply healing about knowing there are people who have seen you at your worst and still choose to stay. As you grow older, you start to recognize that friendship is not about how often you meet, but how deeply you connect. Some days, it's a heartfelt conversation. Other days, it's just knowing someone is out there thinking of you. Real friendship doesn't demand constant presence. It honors trust. It's the quiet reassurance that no matter how the years change you, someone out there remembers your essence. That kind of bond doesn't fade with time, it deepens. At 60, genuine friendships become one of the purest forms of wealth. They remind you that you are still part of something larger than yourself. They bring laughter back into your home, perspective back into your heart, and light back into your days. These are not just friends, they are anchors. They are proof that love doesn't always need to be romantic to be life-saving. And when you look back on your journey, it's not the number of people who surrounded you that matters. It's the few who truly stayed, the ones who saw your soul and chose to walk beside you anyway. There comes a season in life when the roles that once defined you begin to fade. You are no longer the center of your children's world, no longer consumed by the demands of work, no longer needed in the same ways you once were. For many, that shift feels like an identity loss, as if the script that guided every day has suddenly gone blank. But beneath that emptiness lies an invitation to rediscover who you are when you are no longer living only for others. Purpose beyond family roles is not about abandoning love or responsibility. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were silenced beneath them. It's about remembering that your story did not end when your children grew up, when your partner changed, or when your career slowed down. You are still becoming, even now. For decades, it's easy to measure your worth by how much you give. You pour yourself into raising children, building a household, supporting others, making sacrifices in the name of love. And then one day, You wake up and realize that everyone you cared for has gone on to live their own story. The noise of daily life quiets, and you are left with a kind of silence that feels unfamiliar. That silence, though uncomfortable, holds the potential for rebirth. It asks you to look inward and ask the question you may have avoided for years: who am I when no one needs me? The answer doesn't come quickly. It begins as a whisper, a tug at the edges of your curiosity. Maybe it's something you used to love before life got busy. Painting, writing, teaching, gardening, helping others. Maybe it's something entirely new, something that calls you now because of the wisdom and scars you've earned. Purpose at this stage of life is not about ambition. It's about meaning. It's the quiet fulfillment that comes from doing something that keeps your spirit awake. You start to understand that you don't need a grand mission to feel alive. You just need to feel useful, connected, and authentic in what you do. Living with purpose beyond family roles also means shifting how you see yourself. You are not just a parent, a spouse, or a grandparent. You are an individual with dreams that still matter. Too often, people at this age are told to slow down, to step aside, to accept that their best years are behind them. But purpose defies that message. It tells you that your wisdom is not a burden, it's a gift. The experiences you've gathered, the lessons you've lived through, they are not relics of the past. They are seeds for what comes next. You have stories that can guide others, insights that can heal, creativity that can inspire. When you start to share them, life opens again in ways you didn't expect. Sometimes purpose finds you in service. Helping others, whether through volunteering, mentoring, or simply being present, reminds you that your life still has immense value. There's a unique kind of joy that comes from giving without expectation, from seeing your presence bring comfort or light to someone else's path. You realize that purpose isn't always loud or public. Sometimes it's found in quiet moments of kindness, in the way you listen to someone who feels unseen, or in the way you show up for a community that needs care. These small acts ripple far beyond what you can measure, and they give you a sense of belonging that family alone can't provide. Purpose beyond family also requires courage. The courage to start again, to learn, to be a beginner at something new. Many people hesitate because they believe it's too late to reinvent themselves. But purpose doesn't demand youth, it demands presence. It's not about time, it's about willingness. Every day you wake up is another chance to build something meaningful. Maybe it's starting a project you've always dreamed about. Maybe it's exploring spirituality. Maybe it's deepening your connection to nature. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that it makes you feel alive. And as you grow into this new chapter, you begin to see that purpose is deeply connected to identity. When you live only for others, your reflection depends on their recognition. When you live with purpose, your reflection becomes your own. You no longer wait for validation, for appreciation, for acknowledgement. You do what fulfills you because it aligns with who you are now, not who you used to be. That alignment brings peace, confidence, and quiet pride. It reminds you that your value was never tied to your roles. It was always rooted in your being. Finding purpose beyond family doesn't mean loving your family less. It means loving yourself enough to keep evolving. It means showing your children and grandchildren that life doesn't end at any age, it transforms. It becomes deeper, simpler, more intentional. It's about turning inward not to escape others, but to reconnect with your own soul. And when you do that, something beautiful happens. You become a source of inspiration, not because you're trying to be, but because you're living authentically. You become proof that purpose is not something you lose when your roles change. It's something you discover when you finally have the time to listen to your heart. Emotional resilience is the quiet strength that carries you through life's changes, especially after 60, when the world feels both familiar and foreign at the same time. It's the ability to face loss, loneliness, disappointment, and uncertainty without letting them define you. It's not about pretending to be strong. It's about being honest enough to feel the pain and still choosing to move forward. By this stage of life, you've likely lived through moments that cracked your heart open. You've lost people you loved, faced health scares, and watched dreams shift or fade. And yet, you're still here. That alone is proof of your resilience, even if you don't always feel it. Emotional resilience is not something you inherit, it's something you build layer by layer through every heartbreak and recovery, through every time you've stood back up after falling apart. When you're younger, it's easy to believe that strength means control, that if you just try hard enough, you can prevent loss or pain. But age teaches you otherwise. You learn that control is an illusion, and peace comes not from holding on, but from letting go. Emotional resilience is born in those moments when you stop fighting what is and start accepting what life gives you, even when it's not what you expected. It's the ability to sit in discomfort without losing yourself to fear or bitterness. It's understanding that pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And each time you allow yourself to feel fully, without shame or denial, you expand your capacity for compassion, for yourself and for others, at 60 and beyond. Emotional resilience also means learning to live with uncertainty. The future no longer stretches out endlessly, and that reality can bring both clarity and grief. You begin to measure time differently, to value presence over plans. You start to see that resilience is not about ignoring fear, but about walking alongside it. It's about saying, I don't know what's next, but I'll meet it with grace. This acceptance transforms the way you experience everything. Even sorrow becomes softer when you stop resisting it. Even solitude becomes sacred when you see it as space for reflection rather than emptiness. There's a quiet dignity in people who have built emotional resilience. They don't crumble easily, not because they don't hurt, but because they've learned that feelings are temporary and healing is always possible. They've learned to talk to themselves kindly, to sit with their emotions like old friends instead of enemies. They've learned to stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? That shift from resistance to response is the heart of resilience. It's what keeps your spirit steady, even when everything around you changes. Resilience also grows from connection. Even the strongest hearts need places to rest. Having people who understand your silence, who don't rush you to feel better, who allow you to be seen in your rawest moments. Those connections remind you that you're not alone. Sometimes resilience looks like reaching out when your instinct is to withdraw. Sometimes it's allowing someone to help you without feeling ashamed. True strength is not in isolation, but in openness. It's knowing when to lean and when to stand. It's the balance between independence and interdependence, between being self-sufficient and still being willing to receive care. There's also an emotional maturity that comes with age, a deep knowing that not every battle needs to be fought. Not every opinion needs to be defended. Not every wound needs to be reopened. You learn to conserve your energy, to protect your peace like something sacred. You start to recognize that forgiveness is not for others, but for your own freedom. You learn that letting go is not losing, it's clearing space for what truly matters. Emotional resilience gives you the wisdom to see that life is not about avoiding pain, but about integrating it into your story with grace. This strength also shows up in the way you handle change. Retirement, empty homes, shifting friendships, health challenges, all of them can make you question your place in the world. But resilience teaches you that change doesn't erase your worth. It gives you the chance to evolve. You begin to rebuild your identity, not around what you've lost, but around what still gives you meaning. You start finding beauty in smaller things. The morning light through the window, a good conversation, the sound of your own laughter. You realize that happiness was never about circumstances, it was about perspective. Emotional resilience is the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the quiet courage to keep your heart open even after it's been broken, to keep trusting life even after it's disappointed you. It's the decision over and over again to stay present, to keep showing up, to keep loving, to keep believing that your story still matters. And perhaps the most powerful truth about resilience is that it doesn't look heroic from the outside. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed. Sometimes it's forgiving yourself. Sometimes it's sitting with your sadness without running from it. Every time you do that, you rebuild the foundation within you. You remind yourself that no matter what changes, you are still whole, still capable, and still worthy of peace.